Right, welcome to VirtualCon 2.0. Special guest is David Barrie. Lovely to have you, David. How are you?
Hello there, Helen. Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it very much. I'd like to say hello to you, and I'd like to say hello to everybody that will be seeing this at this time of strange times. It kind of, in one sense, makes prisoners of us all, doesn't it, really?
It's really strange because we've suddenly got this rule of six. And I just,
yes,
how ironic is all of this?
Well, we live in unprecedented times. I guess at one time in the future, they would say, not BC and AD, but pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Quite possibly, yeah.
But it is, and it symbolises really, and we should learn from this. What it's telling us is that there's always a price to pay for abusing anything. For every action, there's a reaction. Back in the 1960s, I was already thinking about the environment and what we were doing. And when I heard that Friends of the Earth had been formed in 1971, I was at the very first meeting.
Right, yeah.
And I think what tends to happen is that the analogy is the magician's hat.
Yes.
Imagine, we're all rabbits being pulled out of the magician's hat. Most rabbits just say, well, where's the next bit of lettuce?
Yeah.
But some rabbits say, hey, that's a clever trick. How's that done?
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was Thomas Edison, the inventor, who said that 5% of the population think, 10% think that they think, and the rest don't really want to know.
Yeah.
We never ask the big questions, and I'm all about going into and researching the big questions. So why have we got COVID? Because we abuse nature. That's why.
Yeah.
Wet markets in Wuhan and all of that. People have been saying for years, who are at the cutting edge of knowing these things, look, this is what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't learn from our mistakes. So there you go. My book, one of the things is that we learn from our mistakes. But there we are. You want to ask me about the book, don't you?
I do want to ask you about the book. So you've been spending lockdown doing many things, but one of the things is writing a book. And do you want to tell us a bit more about it? Do the big reveal, Dave.
The roots of writing the book go back to 1976, when I had my details broadcast late at night. Because there was a guy called Peter Tomlinson, who's a proper continuity announcer, and he asked reviewers to write in, which they did, and he aired some of their thoughts on what the series was about. And I thought, I just want to meet those people. So I wrote to Central, and we agreed. I was very lucky. They broadcast my details, and so Prisoner Fandom kind of coalesced around that. And my primary aim was to meet half a dozen other people in a pub somewhere, talk about the prisoner, and then we'll all get on with our lives.
Well, didn't quite go like that, did it?
No, not quite. And so in those very early days, in our very first journal called Alert, lots of people wrote in and said what they thought the series was all about.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. There was real gold dust in there, real magic. And I got introduced to all sorts of concepts. I'd never come across the work of Franz Kafka before.
Right.
And so I became interested in Kafka, the writer, and his books, The Castle, The Trial, Metamorphoses, original thinking. So going on from that, I managed to get a steam-driven video recorder and player. £300 second-hand in 1977. 1 hour tapes to record were then something like £13. I managed to record the episodes because the series was being transmitted regionally So my recorder went somewhere else, and they were recorded for me.
Right. Yeah.
And I then went round, because we had lots of flourishing local groups.
Right.
I then took my video recorder and the episodes round, and I played clips, and
Yeah.
I asked people what they thought about it. And so we used to call that the Magic Lantern Show.
Oh, right.
And then I guess there was a period of time of many years where it just all circulated in my brain, and I started writing again for the magazine. And I was particularly interested in an episode called Dance of the Dead, which polarizes opinion.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
One half of the membership wonder what on earth it's all about, and they can't really follow it. The other half think this is magic, this is fantastic, and I fall in that camp. Because it consistently polled so low, I determined to do something about that.
Yeah.
My first port of call was to contact the writer Anthony Skene, and I had dialogue with him.
Yeah.
And what he said about where he got his inspiration from, which was from a film called The Devil and Daniel Webster, and because he was, quote, in love with the world of Jean Cocteau,
Yes.
unquote. Now, that introduced me to Cocteau and the films that he made, which were Beauty and the Beast, Orphée, and Blood of a Poet. And these were surreal films. They were magic films, unlike anything I'd seen before. And so then I began researching Cocteau, and it led me on to other things, which was Skene wrote a screenplay which was made as a series called Seven Deadly Sins on ITV, called File on Harry Jordan. Well, the prisoner elements in that were clearly evident.
Yeah.
And I think it was that led George Markstein, the script editor, to beat a path to his door, as well as that Skene had been talking with George about a script for Danger Man, which never happened. And there's a lot of these elements in File on Harry Jordan. So I began to write about this, and I wrote in all about 4 or 5 articles on Dance of the Dead. And a member wrote in and said, I think Mr. Barrie should write a book on it. And anyway, time passed, and about 15 years ago, and I was still writing for the magazine, and by this time I've been doing the brain bashes. The first one was because I thought, we go to Port Merion, we do the conventions, where's all the discussion about what the series is about?
Yeah. Yeah.
We do a 9 a.m. slot in the pink gazebo for an hour, and that's it. So I thought, I'm going to do a whole day, start to finish, which became afterwards The Long and Winding Road.
Yeah.
In which the chapters are, a voyage of discovery, why the prisoner is a work of art, sources, origin and inspiration, social comment, games in checkmate, fantasy element, from Kafka to Kierkegaard, Christianity to the Book of the Dead. It's all there.
Yeah.
Much of this was because I trawled either my own brain or what people had said, and articles that had appeared in society periodicals. The majesty of fallout, and for me and some others, I guess, the prisoner is a tool, a route to freedom. This is what somebody said that I put in here.
Yeah.
How this unique series has contributed to my spiritual growth. A journey of wonder and magic, ultimately liberating. Truth is not absolute. We cannot tell the truth to another, for it may not be their truth. The prison we have to escape from is ultimately created by ourselves. Each of us, and each of us alone, holds the key. It's an irony of life that the more we understand our imprisonment, the freer we can become. That's music to my ears.
Yeah.
So this one-day seminar in Birmingham, I got over 50 members who and came to Birmingham for a day and listened to me. And then I wrote up the booklet, and I got a lot of good comment on that. I held 3 or 4 more of those. To one of them, editor John S. Smith and Ian Rakoff, author of Living in Harmony, came, and other people also did slots. And then gradually, the Brain Bash settled down as a segment in our convention.
Yeah.
And people either, it's you either like it or you don't, I suppose. About 15 years ago, a publisher approached me and said, "Ever thought of writing a book on the prisoner?" I hadn't. But I was working, I was doing a lot of things, I never had the time. So it was, given the lockdown, I thought, now's the time to start. And so I did. So what's the book about? The title is, What's It All About? The subtitle is Question Everything. And by question everything, I mean question everything, because that's what McGoohan wanted us to do. That was what he was saying. And so I wanted to take that out into life. So I started on research. I realized pretty early on that there'd be 17 chapters, of course, per episode.
Yeah.
But there's going to be more chapters because there's more to say. In the course of my research, I'm going through every society periodical, right back to the beginning. I'm following leads. I'm watching the episodes. I'll give you an example. You know, there's that scene in Fallout where number 6 goes into a room where there's the tailor's dummy wearing his suit, and it's his mask, and there's the coat hangers. And the supervisor says, "We thought you would be happier as yourself."
Yeah.
No one's ever commented on it apart from me.
Yeah.
Surely I'm not alone in having thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that about? It's there deliberately. McGoohan said he's saying something to us. What's he saying? I commented on it in The Long and Winding Road, in the essay that I was invited to write for the first Orange Alert, Key to the Kingdom. I've expanded a little on it. I did 5 articles before taking a sabbatical for Orange Alert, working on the episodes from the back towards the front. The first one, of course, was Fallout, but I was limited to 3,000 words.
Right.
Writing a book, I can fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Each of the 3 chapters that I'm working on are between 6,000 and 7,000 words, and I suspect there's more to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one that I'm actually on change of mind is I'm up to 7,000 words, and I've only got to scene 2.
Right. So you're going really in depth into
I want to drill down.
Yeah.
As a course of this, I thought perhaps I should read, because I've got a number of the books written about it. It's about the episodes and what they are and describing them. It's about production.
Yeah.
Very seldom does it go off and then not very far down as to what it's all about. To me, it's 3 R's: research, reflect, write.
Yes.
But of course, along that is analysis and interpretation. I guess really, what I'll do is I'll give you a bit here. You see, I'm working on, as I say, change of mind.
Yes.
Everybody heads their episode, whatever the name of the episode is. I don't.
Okay.
A change of mind. I try to get to the essence of what it's all about. So, and to thine own self be true, to hold fast at the darkest hour. The recorded voice, which actually we don't hear, says, "Confession is a complete defence." That's in the Star Chamber scene.
Yep.
Roger Parks. Well, again, this was an episode that I thought had a jolly good plot, but it had never been really explored. It did not perform well whenever there was a review of favourite episode order. So, through a very nice guy who was a then member of 6 of 1, Simon Coward, he found out the author's address, Roger Parks.
Right.
I contacted Roger. I sent him a card. 2 days later,
Yeah.
I got a card back from him.
Fantastic.
How's that? And the result was that he and a guy called Stephen Ricks, who wanted to film it,
Yes.
went down to interview Roger. And we got on really well. Had a great interview. Roger said it was the first script that he'd ever written.
Oh, wow.
He had a brother who was a psychologist and who knew about lobotomies.
Right.
Also, Roger had just finished reading a famous book called The Manchurian Candidate.
Yes.
First made into a film with Frank Sinatra, more latterly with Denzel Washington. Now, lobotomies, interesting things. I'll read you a little bit from this. Ever come across Ken Kesey's book and the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yes.
You have.
Yes.
It's quite famous, stars Jack Nicholson.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's a version of The Prisoner, isn't it, really? If you stop to think about it.
Kind of is. Yeah. I've not actually, because it's been so long since I've watched.
One man held against his will,
Yeah.
with powers that want to break him.
Yeah.
Ken Kesey wrote the book long before the film. The film was in the 70s, and Roger said he hadn't seen the film,
Mhm.
and he hadn't read the book. He saw the film after.
Okay.
Ken Kesey worked as for research in a night ward of mentally troubled patients. He came to see that these people were not mentally disturbed. They simply were individuals who saw the world in a different way.
Mm.
So we come to conformity.
Yeah.
Conformity is an interesting thing. When you're with a very small child, the child is itself, fully itself. Gradually it learns to guard itself against the world,
Yeah.
and to not submit itself to the outside world, to keep part of itself back. And so we get the beginning of conformity.
Mm.
Conformity is we are afraid to poke our head above the parapet. It's either instituted by oneself or by countries. If you think of North Korea, Stalin's Russia,
Mm.
places like that, you conform or else. And where the lobotomies are concerned, Ken Kesey saw, as did a very famous psychologist called Ronnie Lang, R.D. Lang, back in the 60s, who also believed this. And Ronnie Lang was bigger than the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
But no one's ever heard of him now.
No.
But he took places by storm. And he wrote books like The Divided Self that were incredibly popular. So this gave Kesey the ammunition to write One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Many lobotomies were done by a guy called Freeman. And I'll just read this out. What is perhaps most remarkable about Freeman was he had no surgical certification, and yet he cut out people's frontal lobes.
Gosh.
2/3 of Freeman's subjects received no benefit from the procedure or were worse off, and 2% died. His most notorious failure was Rosemary Kennedy, sister of the future president.
Yeah.
In 1941, she was 23 years old, a vivacious and attractive girl, but headstrong, with a tendency to mood swings. She also had some learning difficulties, though these seem not to have been nearly as severe and disabling as have sometimes been reported. Her father, exasperated by her willfulness, had her lobotomized by Freeman without consulting his wife.
Right, yeah.
This essentially destroyed her. She spent the next 64 years in a care home in the Midwest, unable to speak, incontinent, and bereft of personality.
Mm.
Her loving mother did not visit her for 20 years. Well, little wonder that with a trail of wreckage, human wreckage, lobotomies fell out of favour.
Mm.
It says here, almost without exception, people who've been lobotomized were obedient, lifeless shells. The Oxford Companion of the Body counteracts that. But the author, who's done further research, says this was true.
Mm.
And the author is Bill Bryson.
Yes.
Book of the Body. So, you see, I try to go into all sorts of places to find out things. Lobotomies, brainwashing. I think there's something to be said here about brainwashing, because that's when we really encounter it.
Mm.
Each episode is going to go into depth and drill down about particular things. So talking about brainwashing, where does it come from? It comes from the Korean War.
Yep.
What happened here was that the action began on July the 5th, 1950. North Korea and China, etc., versus South Korea and American firepower.
Mm-hmm.
An American soldier who had been captured 2 days before made a broadcast to the South consisting of North Korean propaganda. 2 days. This was the first of many by a captured American serviceman. It was estimated that 1 out of 10 American servicemen captured collaborated. The Americans, of course, couldn't figure out what was going on. It was only after the war's armistice, not end, because it's not officially over, there's just a ceasefire, that they tried and got to the bottom of it, which was that the fact that this thing called brainwashing had been taking place. And it was intensive indoctrination over a protracted period. The term brainwashing was coined by a journalist named Edward Hunter, who served in the Morale Operations section of the US Office of Strategic Services. His book, Brainwashing in Red China, The Calculated Destruction of Men's Minds, appeared in 1951. He translated the term, which is Yi Shao Si Niao. But someone like Malcolm may well know whether I'm pronouncing that correctly or not. It means in Chinese, cleansing of the mind. And that, of course, led to Richard Conlon writing a hugely popular book, The Manchurian Candidate, which in turn led to incredible paranoia all around the world. The Americans thought, and this is the concept of Condon's book, that you can brainwash someone so much that they will become a sleeper, and at a given signal, they will be reactivated. And that's the plot. The other strand, of course, is being sent to Coventry, isolationism,
Mm-hmm.
and being unmutual.
Mm.
The term unmutual goes back to George Orwell and his novel 1984, which in turn he drew on from Stalin's show trials of the 1930s. The people that disappeared without trace and were erased from literature, and photographs and everything became referred to as an unperson. So it's a short step from unperson to unmutual.
Indeed, yeah.
The most well-known example was Leon Trotsky, who's Stalin had all these show trials, and what happened was they were airbrushed away. So you had this, what was supposed to be a communist country was in fact a totalitarian state.
Mm.
So this is all going into the episode, including where did Orwell get his ideas for 1984? Well, yeah. he was, and he fought on the Republican side in the Spanish Civil War. But he also worked in a department in the war. Yeah. He worked for Brendan Bracken, Big Brother, the Minister of Information. The first casualty of war is truth. Mm. Orwell was very aware of the manipulation, censorship, and propaganda that's practiced by all warring factions. Now, McGoohan did say that 1984 had influenced him. So I'm going into and doing a lot of research on things like that. That's why I'm up to 7,000 words.
Yes.
This is not going to be a big seller. This is not going to be a bestseller. This is going to be for people that want to really go into and explore what everything is in The Prisoner. Every scene, every word, every concept. When I do the Western, living in harmony, okay, what am I bringing to the party? I'm bringing over 50 years of my love of this TV program and the research that I've already done to all the brain bashes. And now I've got the time and the desire to really explore further.
Yeah.
I've got the fact that I was able to interview a number of the writers. I've got the fact that I've been able to interview a number of the actors. Elle said, he said, no point asking me about The Prisoner. I can't remember what it was all about.
Right. Yeah.
That was where I was. But then I spent a lot of time with Alexis Canner. Alexis and I became, I don't know why, we became friends.
Yeah.
And I'll be driving around. I had a mobile phone. Dave, where are you, Dave? And I'd meet him in London and we'd go for a meal. He took me for a meal one evening, and a bottle of champagne appeared and one glass. He said, I know you like champagne. And I said, well, yeah, but there's only one glass. I don't drink now. He said, I found that when I was making my film, Kings and Desperate Men, in the middle of winter at night in Montreal, we were all drinking a bottle of brandy a night to keep warm.
Oh, gosh.
So I don't drink now. Anyway, Alexis and I had some quite good conversations. So when I was able to write the Western, I had all the conversations I had with Alexis.
Yes.
And I happened to contact the writer who came up with it. Well, that's not strictly true, because it was Frank Mayer that suggested to McGoohan that they make a Western. He said, it's all in the mind anyway. Why don't we do a Western?
Yeah.
But when they were appealing, which they were, to the guys who were working on the series, the technicians, anyone got any ideas? Ian Rakoff thought Western.
Yeah.
And so the two minds kind of thought alike. And I wanted to interview Ian, and I just happened to contact him at the very time that he was being commissioned to write a book.
Yes.
And so he kind of liked me, I liked him. After a day's work driving around London, I'd go to his flat, we'd have a meal, nice bottle of red wine, and we'd talk over where he was at.
Fantastic.
So it gave me a great insight and a lot of information to start writing Living in Harmony. Now, in turn, this leads me to be able to introduce other things. Like, for example, I want to talk about censorship. Do we believe in censorship? Can it be good? Can it be bad? Should it be or not?
Mm.
You can take a point. No, there shouldn't be censorship. The arguments, or there should.
Yeah.
I'll cite one. Ever come across a film called Birth of a Nation?
No, I haven't.
I have a great love of early film, silent film.
Yeah.
In 1915, a pioneer called D.W. Griffith made a production unlike any other. It was over 2 hours long. Films weren't that long then.
No, no.
It was called The Birth of a Nation. It was set during the American Civil War and its aftermath. And what it was about was the birth of the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Highly controversial.
Mm.
By 1915, the Ku Klux Klan had all but died away. The film was adapted from a 1905 novel, The Klansman. It was a huge commercial success and is generally considered to be the most divisive and inflammatory motion picture in American history. It portrayed black African Americans, played by whites blacked up, as unintelligent and sexually aggressive towards white women. There's a very infamous scene which shows, well, it shows, they're in the few white men and the women they're trying to hold off the marauding. Oh, right. So, to this day, it provides powerful evidence in any debate concerning censorship. Given the reaction, Griffith was spurred on to his next picture titled Intolerance. So, what I'm trying to do is to go through The Prisoner and how it relates to us.
Yeah.
What McGoohan is trying to say,
Yeah.
what we can learn from it. He said, question everything. We can use it as a tool, as the guy that I quoted earlier on, and others have, as a route to freedom.
So how long do you think this book's going to take you? Because obviously you're going into such great detail.
Bearing in mind I'm retired and winter's coming, a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's what I think. It is going to be no short work. I'm it's the most fun I've had with my clothes on in a long time.
So you're really enjoying the whole creative process, and
I am. It is something that is immensely enjoyable.
Yeah.
And where it's all going to end, I don't know. Each chapter I will go through. Now, as I finish one now, I'm putting it to one side, and I'll go back to it in a year's time and see if I can improve on it. So it's going to be a long book, and I'm going to have a 5-star system that I score out of 5, a Barrie-ometer.
right.
And then there's going to be a section on kind of points for discussion, really. Like for the Western, in your view, does a Western fit into the Prisoner format?
Yeah.
What does this episode say about the pressure to conform? Discuss the pros and cons of censorship. Then I say seek out the following Westerns where the theme of the hero refusing to pick up a gun is intelligently explored. Do that. Do the deaths of 88 and 22 presage the titanic struggle of wills by number 2 in The Prisoner in Once Upon a Time? So there's a lot to be going at.
Definitely.
And if I'm going to score out of 5, I give Fallout a 6.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Why do I give Fallout a 6? We were all hooked, weren't we, when we first saw it? How's it all going to end? You know, I, like everybody else, I sat down, and when I saw Fallout, I was blown away. Bearing in mind that it was kind of written in 72 hours, it is confused and confusing.
Yeah.
I said a few things about it here. I said, here we are. Ambitious, confused, surreal. Fallout burst upon the scene, rupturing the very institution of television. The result, predictably, is audience outrage. That was from the 1984 documentary on it called 6 into 1, The Prisoner File. But it is, it says so much, and it's totally surreal, and it is the perfect ending. And there's richness in it. There's much to explore. Everything is there that we want. And McGoohan wanted to ensure there wasn't a sequel. He wanted to end it.
Mm.
And as we know, he said about it being, you know, who is number one? It's that part of us all.
Yeah.
It is, you know, is that evil that we do. An American author, Thomas Hudson, published in 1893 a book called The Law of Psychic Phenomena. He conjectured we have two minds. This is what I researched and found out. He called them the objective and the subjective. The former is the part that deals with the external world, that copes, the realist, the outside. The subjective remains hidden in shadow. It looks inward, it is concerned with feelings, sensations, and emotions. In a sense, we get into the territory of Jung and psychology and everything that involves. And Jung twitched the veil between, and you know, he's known for symbolism and things like that. I looked at this and I thought to myself, yeah, I see it this way. We've got the ego, the part, this is how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We face the world with this. It's a conscious mind, you know, it thinks that it is all the mind.
Yeah.
But deep within is this thing, the inner voice, the conscience. And the conscience tells us what's right and what's wrong if we listen to it. This is why people do mindfulness, which is another word for meditation.
Sure. Yeah.
By heaven, we have a lot to thank the Beatles for, particularly George Harrison, because George's interest in Eastern philosophies and mysticism enabled the West to open up about the Eastern schools of thought, and that's been a real blessing. So, the thing that's inside this inner voice is what we listen to in mindfulness, what we really feel. Because we all live in this fast-moving world where we're kind of just rushing about doing things. I see it like this. Our human body is a chariot. The horses is the conscious mind. Now, if you let horses run, they'll go this way and that. They go everywhere. They think about yesterday, tomorrow. If your mind's thinking about, what am I going to do? I'm going to have a cup of tea. Where am I going to go on holiday? Or that was a good program I saw on TV last night. Think about all of these things. It's never still. The inner voice is the charioteer who grabs hold of the reins and directs the horses where it wants them to go. And to me, that is what the prisoner means to me. Remember the guy I quoted earlier about he felt free? Another one said, The prisoner can be a route to freedom. Here's part of a letter. I'll just give his initials because I don't want to name him. MK, who confesses to listening to others and following their advice, doing the sensible thing. Then one day he decided, that's it. I'm going to do what I want and reach my own goal. Thank you, 601, for teaching me to fulfill my desires and not the desires of the majority. Because we keep thinking to ourselves, what's the right thing to do here?
Yeah.
How do we fit in here? I can't say this, I can't do that. Providing it doesn't hurt anybody else, we should all lead a true, authentic life, true to what we feel inside, provided it doesn't do any harm to each other. We're all individuals. The world is divided in two. Those who want to tell other people what to do and those who obey. I find it a complete, an irony that when we watch TV, we all love police dramas where the hero is a maverick. And because of your experience, that that's not the way police work works. So there's kind of all of those things there. I'm using some of the material from my brain bashes because that's appropriate to all the research that I've been doing through the years.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why my book is going to be radically different to anything else that's out there.
Yeah, it sounds very in depth. As you've been going through the research, have you discovered something, sort of 50 years later, something that's new that's appeared, even though you've been very familiar with the whole prisoner for such a long time?
Well, yeah, I mentioned, didn't I, about the origin of the word unmutual?
Yes.
Well, I didn't know that it came from unperson, it came from Stalin. I didn't know about that at all. And there's all sorts of other things that I'm finding. And of course, when I watch it, I sit down with my Robert Fairclough book, the script book, which I really recommend.
Yeah.
You probably have to source it now on the, eBay or somewhere like that. But I really recommend Robert's books. And I can see the differences between what, for example, Roger wrote and what then Patrick did and the changes that Patrick made to bring it to the screen.
Yeah.
So all of those things are there. And I'll give you another example. I haven't got to Arrival yet. I'm not working chronologically. In Arrival, which sets the scene, that McGoohan says it's the best pilot that he's ever come across. Best pilot episode. It's just fleetingly what you see is this in the hospital, a look down a corridor with this man at the end dressed in the prisoner's suit, watching a ping pong ball and uttering gibberish. No one's ever said anything about what that's all about. So let's explore that. Obviously, we've got something going on here, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. And something quite sinister.
Yeah. In no books, in nothing I've ever read or heard, has someone ever really sought to analyse that. And that's what I want to do. Because I, too, want to spark debate. Also, and I'd never thought about this, but Curtis in Schizoid Man, someone mentioned it to me the other day. We had clones introduced in Arrival. Maybe Curtis is a clone. And I thought, well, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
So you see, all the time, I'm coming across new things.
Yeah, yeah,
There are some good books that kind of start going into this, but I suspect because they're writing what they have to write for, blah blah blah, they're very limited to what they can actually say. One particular book that I really do like is called Decoding the Prisoner by Chris Gregory. It
yes.
was written in 1999. Oh, I really recommend that. So I think I've kind of gone full circle. I'll just read you out a bit here about a change of mind. I say this will give you an idea. This is a heavyweight episode. It marks a turning point. This will be the last conventional story. After this, the final 5 will mark a significant departure from the format that we have become accustomed to. This is the bleakest, the grimmest, and the most melancholic of all the 17 chapters that comprise the prisoner's journey from resignation, imprisonment, through his trials, to his eventual escape, if indeed he has escaped. We will discuss this in the Fallout chapter. Perhaps in tone, a change of mind might compare to the concluding scenes in Free for All, where the scent of victory by the prisoner over the village is so emphatically dashed as he is crushed physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Yet, when all appears lost, at the darkest hour, the prisoner outwits the village and seizes an emphatic victory. His opponent, a calculating number 2, reaping a bitter harvest. And I like to introduce things as well, like in the writing the Western, I describe Alexis in some detail. Living with Harmony is an episode that, in a sense, it's very different to anything that's come before, isn't it? We are getting right away from the format.
Absolutely. It surprised me, that one, the first time I watched the series.
Yeah, it's wonderful. The series bursts free from the accepted format.
Mm.
The episode marks a real turning point in the progression of the series. Until now, the boundaries have been flexible but clear. The format has been observed. Here we actively defy the established framework of the resistant prisoner's struggle against the dark forces of the village, instead challenging the viewer and becoming experimental, exploratory, and controversial. The genie was truly out the bottle.
Mm.
And we all love Alexis. Alexis was absolutely wonderful, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they were thinking of casting him, Rose Tobias Shaw, who was the casting director, said, "He'll tear up the scenery." Now, this comment demands some explanation. In 1966, the BBC introduced a spin-off from the acclaimed police drama series Z-Cars.
Mm-hmm.
For the benefit of those unfamiliar with that production, it was highly realistic in the way that Hill Street Blues was when that emerged in the 1980s. The BBC's new series, Softly Softly, moved away from uniformed police work to that of the detective. One character was Detective Constable Matt Stone, played by rising star Alexis Canner, and he just walked away with it. Made all the other actors look wooden. He possesses an edge, a dangerous edge.
Mm.
You expect him to come straight out the screen at you in full incandescent Technicolor at any moment, a hand grenade with a pin out. So this isn't all factual. This is feelings as well. This is the impact, how it resonates, how thousands and thousands and thousands of people it's resonated with. I want to bring it to life. I want to make it live. This isn't going to be a stodgy read at all. It's going to be, I hope, the text is going to dance.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot to explore, a lot to do, and I hope it's going to be well received. It will be the work of a lifetime, not just a few years.
Yeah.
When I first saw The Prisoner, I was hooked, and it never let go.
Yeah.
And I don't expect it ever will. But it can be this route to freedom. As
Absolutely.
the guy said, the more you understand the nature of the prison, the freer you become.
Yeah. Yeah.
There'll be many, many things in it.
Excellent. I'm really, really excited about your book because you've been kind enough to send me a little snippet, which I've read, thoroughly enjoyed, and thoroughly enjoyed all the conversations we've had. So I think it will be very popular. I think people are interested in going that step further and uncovering things.
Thank you for saying that.
Welcome.
Thank you everybody for watching as well. And yeah, I guess this is the point where I say, well, I hope there'll be another virtual convention as well.
There will.
And
There will.
I always enjoy discussing The Prisoner with people, because my way and what I think is going to be different to your way, and your way's just as valid.
Yeah, I think people enjoy that when we come together as prisoner fans and have the social and the conversation and we discuss episodes. And to, as you say, read somebody else's opinion, but not just somebody else, Dave Barry's opinion on, you know, the whole series and how you describe all the episodes. It's just a very interesting aspect which you bring to the whole series in itself, which is really exciting.
It is going to be a long road, and all the brain bashes I've done, I've tried, as you probably know, to make interactive. I don't just want to stand there and talk to people, which is why I want the audience to be involved, which is why I hand out sheets and it's got things on for people to write down what they think. And I got some, you know, some really interesting feedback from that. And so to me, the highlight of the year is doing the brain bash, which probably next year I may take a sabbatical off it, because there's someone else that might well do it.
Yeah.
But I love doing the brain bash because I want people's minds to be stimulated. You know, we're in Port Meriam, we're steeped in this wonderful surrounding. Let's use it to spark off our imaginations. Remember, everyone, your point of view is just as valid as anybody else on anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just conform because that's what you do. No, I went to two schools in my after primary. Well, one was a school, one was a college of further education. I was highly unsuccessful.
Right.
I left school with no qualifications at all.
Okay.
It's just been the university of life.
Yeah, yeah. I think
thirst and love of research, finding out things. How can I learn things?
Yeah, yeah. I think people get too hung up on qualifications because people learn in different ways, and you don't necessarily have to, you know, unless you want to study to be a physicist, for example, it's going to be important that you have that education.
A chosen field.
Indeed, yeah. But there's more to research, there's more to learning in the big wide world.
What people don't realise, we all look differently. We all think differently. Because our brains are made of trillions of cells. It comes back to Ken Kesey and him and Ronnie Lang about people who don't, you know, conform are seen as outsiders, and they just happen to see life and think in a different way. There was a documentary on, wasn't no not it was a dramatization of a guy whose name escapes me, but he was a real fan of the football club that at one point Lou Macari was the chief guy there. I don't follow football.
I'm out on football.
And Toby Jones played this guy called Neil somebody, and it was just called Marvelous, because this guy's approach to life was just extraordinary. So much so that he kind of got everywhere that he wanted to go. And so, you know, look it up on the internet. Marvelous. Toby Jones.
Yeah.
And if you get a chance to watch it, do. Because his whole life was completely unorthodox.
Yeah.
And that, you know, we're here. When we get to the end of our lives, do we want to look back and say, well, I fitted in? Or do we want to look back and say, I had a hell of a ride?
Yeah.
It's yeah. There's something called the Myers-Briggs personality profiling. This is not a test.
Yeah.
The BBC once did a simplified version of it to find out what kind of personality you are. There's 4 main kinds. Let's imagine there's 4 people going to play tennis. There's the one that wants to play tennis because you play tennis to win. That's it. That's the whole purpose of it. The second one says, no, actually, I'm going to play tennis because I think it could be an interesting experience. Whether I win or lose doesn't matter. The third person says, oh, well, they're going to play tennis, so I'll play tennis too. The fourth person never gets to play tennis because they're so busy looking after the other 3, making sure they're all right and they've got cups of tea and everything else.
Yeah.
That then drills down further into 16 subtypes. The Myers-Briggs was invented in the 1930s by a mother and daughter, and it's used as personality profiling all over the world. And it's used, for example, in some companies, forward-thinking companies, where you've got an accountant. An accountant sees things in black and white. This is wrong, this is right. A salesman doesn't. A salesman sees things in shades of grey. So they're always going to clash, because a salesman will make a case for why this customer hasn't paid his bill. The accountant says he hasn't paid, we don't supply him anymore. The salesman says, if you don't supply him, you won't get paid because he'll go out of business. Continue to supply him, but get him to pay off for X amount per month. His balance on what he's selling from us, he can do that. In the end, we'll get our money back. So that's a kind of, I've worked at that in part of my business career because that's what I was doing. So it brings out the strengths, and other people can see why people think in different ways. And what we do is we say, oh, that person's weird. No, they're not. They've just got the courage to be themselves.
Yeah.
That's my abiding thing. I'm trying to, it's a lifelong experience, the courage to be oneself. I've got a little saying, in honesty lies my safety.
Yeah.
Name dropping, I was sat next to the Bishop of Durham, and I said that, and he said, I've never heard that before. And I thought, that goes into his Sunday sermon. But yeah, in honesty lies my safety. If you look at all these dramas on TV, so many of the plots come about because someone feels they can't be honest with someone else.
Indeed.
It just spirals and gets complicated. So yeah, my message to everybody out there is not just thank you for listening to this, and if you feel it's right, buy the book. If you don't, that's fine as well. It's not going to go on the Robert Ludlum bestseller list, is it? And just love everyone. Showing anything other than love to anybody and kindness, and the world short on kindness, is really an aberration and takes energy. And it all comes down to, doesn't it, treat others as you would be treated.
I think so, yeah.
Incidentally, I don't follow any religion. I think all religions have their place in the world and they've all got things to say. Then there are also spiritual paths that are, I want to say, other spiritual paths are available. The thought occurred to me, perhaps I'll elaborate a little on, is the other strong strand, and indeed there are many plot elements in A Change of Mind, but apart from the lobotomy, it is this idea of being sent to Coventry. That shot of number 6 in isolation, watching the Canada geese fly east or south, that's such a poignant moment, and many people have registered that. And I mentioned earlier about, you know, when you're a young child, you are just you, and then gradually what happens is, and this is a thing that is just so second nature, we never question it. And that is what happens to us as we become less a child in a nurturing environment and we go to school. What happens at school? You have to conform. And children being children and human beings being human beings, there are those that for whatever reason want to have power over others and bully others. And the teachers don't always detect this. Where you have male and female, boys and girls separated, it gets worse. That's why I think all schools should be mixed. And so schooling is a dehumanizing experience unless you're lucky enough to go to a school not in Western society, or those that Rudolf Steiner came up with the idea. Steiner schools, can't even say the word, anthroposophy. And so this is where the seeds of conformity are planted, and we learn. We go out into the world. How should we behave? How should we be? And that's how we go through life. The human race does not progress. It just changes. We don't actually progress at all. Same fundamental things keep coming up. In A Change of Mind, this is a huge thing, conformity, which I shall go into in a lot of detail. We don't want to stick out. When I first went to school, I went to a lovely school, boys and girls primary, and I went from that to what was a totalitarian nightmare. 2,000 boys in a rough area of London, and it was just unbelievable. For example, I was told I was going to have a choice of learning languages. I didn't. German was thrust upon me. I was hopeless. I was kept after school twice a week. And then being handed 10,000 lines, the class, because half the class over there were messing about. We on this side did the 10,000 lines. They didn't, but the teacher never asked. It's all very morale sapping. And schools are designed largely for implanting knowledge to make you fit to go out into the world to get a job. They're not designed to free the human mind, not unless you're very lucky and you go to a university, perhaps. So it's recognizing what these institutions do to us and how we must be to fit in. Most people have heard of a very influential film back in the 1950s that lampooned British industrial relations called I'm All Right, Jack,
Mm-hmm.
which is a hilarious film and well worth catching. But that's where the saying came from. But in 1960, the plot was used for an altogether darker affair. The film is called The Angry Silence.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very socially aware group of filmmakers under the banner of Woodfall, and it was written by Brian Forbes, and it starred Richard Attenborough, and again it was about a strike, British industrial relations, and one man being sent to Coventry. It's a film that I would highly recommend because it shows the price sometimes of standing up. I like to think that ultimately, you know, if we stand up to be who we are and cherish that, other people will honour it.
Mm.
But I recognise that doesn't always happen. So in life, we have to try to go somewhere, be in a space where we can be our true selves.
Mm.
I don't do social media
Mm.
because it's anti-social media. People can feel free to send the most awful things to each other. I come from the opposite.
Mm.
Can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything. Let's have a kinder world. If everyone was a bit more kinder, you know, the world would just be a magic place. I've not seen many of his films, but you're all familiar with Keanu Reeves, who I believe adopts the principle of acts of random kindness.
Mm.
Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm kind to someone, or I give someone a present, or say something nice to them, I feel a bit better.
Mm.
They feel a bit better. The world becomes, for that second, a nicer place. But by going out, it takes energy and it actually corrodes the human being who says it. If you say something nasty to someone, that's very corrosive.
Mm.
And the person you damage most is yourself.
Mm.
So let us celebrate our individuality. That's my core plea, and that's what I'm saying as part of one of the many things that's going to be in this book.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, completely agree. And I think behaviour breeds behaviour as well.
Yeah. We learn. We learn in one sense what we live. But if you go into yourself and you have that conversation with the conscience, the mindfulness, what is the right thing in this situation? What makes me feel happy? What gives me peace and joy? All the jobs that I've ever had, I took for a smaller salary.
Yeah.
Because it was something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
The result is I had a fantastic work life where for many years, many times, a Monday morning never existed because I was, I'm going to do that today.
Yeah.
Fun.
Brilliant.
That's the main thing in lights. F-U-N. Fun. So thank you everybody for the time, and thank you for watching, and as sure as eggs is eggs, hope to be seeing you.
Thank you very much, Dave, for joining us.